Sometimes there are directors who usually make movies that you just don't like. And I don't mean mixed bags like the Coen brothers or Tim Burton or Ridley Scott. I'm talking about the directors who consistently make films that don't speak to you for whatever reason. But then, one day, they make a movie which grabs your attention. They make a movie which you actually like. These one-hit wonder directors, as I'm going to call them, are entirely subjective, so this is purely my own opinion. Agree or disagree, but these are my top 5 good movies by directors I normally dislike. Number 5. Moulin Rouge by Baz Luhrmann. I dislike Baz Luhrmann a lot. As far as I'm concerned, he's an overly pretentious theater director who stumbled into the film industry and tries to make movies the way he would make theatrical pieces. That being said, Moulin Rouge is the perfect Baz Luhrmann movie. It's exactly the kind of film which he's best at making. We have a high-speed plot, several quirky characters, an insane number of songs, and all the hyperbole you could ask for. This is a tragic story told by a man who is consumed by love. The emotions are all high because our narrator has been driven mad by these emotions. Sure, it's as silly as any of his other films, but unlike Australia or The Great Gatsby or Romeo and Juliet, this is a movie which is completely suited to this kind of silliness. So if the word love is thrown around 10 times per minute without being really examined, or if anachronistic pre-existing songs are sung one after the other in a period piece, it's all okay. Because this is the kind of strange and wondrous film Baz Luhrmann wanted to make. And it won me over, despite being the same kind of film Baz Luhrmann always makes. This time it just worked for me. Number 4. Nothing But the Truth by Rod Lurie. Rod Lurie was a film critic turned filmmaker. And while Rod has occasionally given us something interesting, like Samuel L. Jackson's genuinely great performance in Resurrecting the Champ, unfortunately Rod has mostly fallen by the wayside. But that said, Nothing But the Truth was a genuinely good film about an important topic which continually remains relevant. This story about a journalist who outs a CIA agent to the press and has to struggle with the question of how far she'll go to protect her source. Even if it leads to a jail sentence. The film is a mature look at her conflicts while also pointing out that she's certainly no saint herself. Her actions also have consequences which affect several people beyond herself. There's no real right answer because there's bad consequences either way. I would say that this is an example of Rod Lurie improving his craft after he'd already made a film about reporters before this one, but that still doesn't explain his remake of Straw Dogs. Number 3. Red Dragon by Brett Ratner. Of all the people whom I would imagine directed this film, Brett Ratner would not have been my first choice. His movies have never interested me, no matter how financially successful they might get. But I will be damned if he didn't succeed at making a Hannibal Lecter movie which didn't suck. That's a rare accomplishment. And not only was the movie good, it completely captures the feel of Silence of the Lambs. We can completely believe that this is a prequel to that movie. The actors are back, the lighting and locations are back, and we get some great new performances played by Ed Norton, Ralph Fiennes, Emily Watson, and Philip Seymour Hoffman. I guess you can say that Brett Ratner cheated by having a book to adapt and also emulating a pre-existing film, but really, he could have screwed that up so many different ways. Making a sequel or a prequel is very difficult, even if you can get the original filmmakers back. This was a different director, several years after Silence of the Lambs, and yet he managed to create a film which is almost just as good as the first film. And even if Brett Ratner never directs a good movie again, he can always point to Red Dragon as an example of his work. Number 2. Young Guns by Christopher Kane. Young Guns was one of my favorite movies as a teenager. It featured a group of young outlaws avenging their father figure in the American West. It was also a Brat Pack movie starring Emilio Estevez as Billy the Kid. And it's still one of the best Emilio Estevez performances that I've ever seen. Estevez completely embodies the spirit of a trigger-happy youth who revels in violence and chaos. Alongside him are Kiefer Sutherland, Dermot Mulroney, Lou Diamond Phillips, Casey Siemaszko, and a still respectable Charlie Sheen. This movie is action-packed and filled with wild testosterone as these 6 rebels blaze their vengeance across the film. It's a heck of a ride from start to finish, and it's somehow the only film by Christopher Cain that I've even remotely liked. I mean, Gone Fishin' was universally despised, and The Next Karate Kid was an embarrassment. Aside from that, Cain seems content to make Western films that are not bad, but not great either. And yet, in between all that, he provided me with a movie that I loved, and still enjoy for the genuinely good acting, action, and wild energy that calls to your inner rebel. And number 1, Darfur by Uwe Boll. Just saying Uwe Boll's name invokes an automatic response of revulsion. This is the man who makes his movies through tax loopholes and makes horrible adaptations of video games. But in 2009, I got the chance to see the movie Darfur at a special screening sponsored by Stand Canada, and I was blown away. This was a brilliant, horrifying film. It wasn't the best film of the year, and people will tear it apart for some of its cliché styles, but there was no denying the power of this movie. This is a film about a group of Western journalists who visit a village in Darfur only to see a gang of Janjaweed on the horizon. They can either flee to tell the world what's happening, or they can try and protect the villagers however they can. Some think that their status as journalists will keep them safe, while others want to flee and avoid any chance of violence. At the forefront of this film is David O'Hara, playing the most developed of the main characters, who represents a man that's faced with real evil, and in that moment, he finds his true character. What really confirmed it all for me was the story of this film's production. The actors were often improvising their lines, especially the African actors, as Uwe Boll didn't think it right to give them a script. This was because many of the African actors in the film were actually survivors of the Darfur genocides. This makes their performances all the more harrowing and gut-wrenching to watch when you realize that they're not performing for the camera, they're reenacting the atrocities which were forced upon them. Uwe Boll put great detail into this film for accuracy's sake, and he was determined to make a movie that would do justice to the bloody truth which we in the West tend to ignore or overlook. Darfur flies in the face of everything I've heard or seen from Uwe Boll. This is a film with a purpose, made by professionals with whatever resources they could get. It may not be a great film, but certainly worthy of respect. Do you disagree? Do you have examples of your own? Feel free to comment below. And thank you for watching.